Well, a few weeks ago, Tom, Sarah, and myself, we were talking about the project that Tom and I recently completed with Night Foundry, and I was sharing with Sarah how the project it just got out of control so fast. We had so much information. We were doing videos, we were doing audios, we were taking pictures, and the thing became big really, really fast. So fortunately, we were smart enough to realize we need to start getting organized. Because if we don't start getting organized, we're going to be in trouble. See, we didn't realize that before the project would be over, we'd have 2,800 files. And it would take up 1.6 terabytes of hard drive. And that's on a computer that had a 1 terabyte hard drive. So it was pretty imperative that we start to get our act together. So we sat back and we said, okay, what kind of files are we generating? What do we need to keep organized? Well, we know we needed to do video. It's a film, right? But we also needed to take care of the audio. We needed to take care of still pictures. We call them stills. We had to manage things like sound effects, normally abbreviated SFX. We had animation. And we had narration. Now, some people put narration under audio, but we had it separate. So every segment of our film, and there are 22 segments, by the way, had to have that file structure no matter what. We also realized that everything had to be properly named. So we had to develop a convention of how we were going to name the files. So it got big pretty quick. So we're talking about this, and Sarah said, you know, it sounds like what you guys really needed was a production binder. And I said, a what? And she said, you know, a production binder for the 3 Ps. And I said, the 3 Ps. And she said, well, you know, pre-production, production, and post-production. I thought, that's a good idea. How do we do that? How do we learn that? And here we are. Over to you, Sarah.
Thanks, Jeff. So today we're going to be talking about the 3 Ps of media production. Now, there are actually 5 stages of a production. The first one is the development stage. And now this is the stage where you come up with the idea, you find the passion for this project, and you write it out. So now once you have that locked script or that treatment or that outline, you are now ready for your first step of the 3 Ps. So the 3 Ps are broken down into pre-production, production, and post-production. And then at the very last stage of production is your distribution. So distribution is when you're ready to send it out to be shown to the world. So on social media, into theater, things like that. So phase 1 of the 3 Ps is pre-production, which is the planning stage. So you have your idea, you're ready to roll. So now how are we going to get to actually producing it? So this is where a lot of work happens, is in this pre-production stage. And then we go into phase 2, which is the production. And that's when you actually get into the recording bit. And then phase 3 is that post-production. So you've already recorded, you have footage, now you have to compile it together and edit it together. So let's go to phase 1. So phase 1, pre-production, is where all the planning and preparation before the actual filming or recording happens. So again, you have that passion and that drive, and it's all down on paper. And then you're going to put it all together and organize it and get your crew members and all of that. And that happens in this pre-production stage. So you locked your script in. Now in this stage, you're going to want to look at branding. Branding is crucial because that's going to depend on who you're reaching, who's your demographic, your story, and then that also is going to tell you what kind of media format that you need. Are you working just with social media? Are you doing a podcast? Are you working in a TV broadcast formula, like a television show or a documentary? So from there, now after you have your media format figured out, your branding, you're going to want to look at your budget. Now, budget is extremely important because are you personally financing this project? Are you having financiers coming in? Are you using a grant? That will depend or change your structure of how you will create your program. Because if you're personally funding this project, you can work at whatever level you need to. Now, if you have a financer coming in, you have stricter deadlines. And then if you're working with a grant, you have to work within the windows of how you wrote that grant. Next, after you figure out your budget is, are you hosting it? Are you paying for someone else to come in and be the host? Do you have other talents you want? You're also figuring out like your interviews, things like that. It's all of that preparation and planning that you're doing is in this stage. You're building a crew also. So who are the people that you want to bring in? Who's your sound guy? Who's your camera guy? All of that thought and also discussion with people who want to be involved are happening now in the pre-production stage. Storyboards are a great way to have into pre-production because we are visual storytellers. And what a better way to figure out what we want to say in a visual format. We're also creating schedules. You're finding locations if needed, and you're building your set. Again, it comes down to that branding. What do you want people to see? How does it resonate with your viewers? And so that becomes all part of the stage. Wardrobe is another one. Equipment selection, again, in your media format. So if you're dealing with a podcast, what mics are you using? If you're dealing with a television show, how many cameras do you need? Things like that. And then, of course, you're figuring out your questions, what the story is about, the purpose, and there. So pre-production, one of the biggest tools you can have in pre-production is the production binder. Now, this binder is kind of the living document of your production. It's going to also be your archive when you're finished. And this is crucial to have because it keeps everything organized, all of those ideas, all of those thoughts, and all of the important documents you're going to need to sell your project later. So what is in a production binder? This is where you're going to put your script, your treatment, or your outline. This is where you're going to have your contracts, your rental agreements, your permits, if you need them. Your storyboards, again, we're working in a visual platform, so why not have visual demonstrations of how we want it to look? Your equipment list, your crew calls. Now, crew call is if you're working with a large production and you want to be able to call out to multiple people, that's your crew call. So usually it's sent out the night before a production, and it has like their job listing, what they're doing, schedules, lunch breaks, things like that. We're also going to have probably your production schedule, your shooting schedule, your budget breakdown. You don't want to be midway through production and then run out of money. So it's extremely important to understand how everything is broken down. Model releases, which is crucial because you don't want to get to the point where you're selling your project later and not be able to sell it because you didn't get those model releases. You're also going to have your license agreements, production notes, insurance if you need it, location agreements, and then also you're going to want to start labeling your files and have that inside of your binder also. Now again, your binder is adjustable, so you might be adding other stuff that's not on this list, and that's perfectly fine. So when creating the binder, you can have it in two different formats. You can have a hard copy or you can have a digital file. You can have a combination of both. You can also create different binders for different jobs. But the way I would do it is I would always start off with a cover page with the production title and the contact information. Because what happens if you're working on multiple different projects? Now, it's really important to have that title because you don't want to grab one of the binders for another production and have that on set and be like, oh, darn, I got the wrong one. Let me switch it up. You also want important players' contact information because this binder and production doesn't always happen instantly. So say that you create something and you're going through all of those stages. I mean, there's 5 stages of production. So if you're getting to the distribution stage and you're creating this binder in the development stage, by the time you get to distribution, that could be 5 years down the road. So you need to have the contact and probably update those contact information for your key players. So your producers, your directors, anybody else that is involved that you need to contact later if, say, you need to do something else with this project. You can get really fancy and break it down to the table of contents. So it's easy, again, to just skim through and find what you need to get to. This is nice to have. So for, like, say, you're on set and you are working on location and a police officer comes and they're like, where's your permit? Now, if you have a table of content and you know exactly where all your permits are for all those different locations, you also know where your location agreements are. You can skim through, find it very quickly. So it's nice to be as organized as possible for any production because, again, time is money and you don't want to be wasting time searching for something instead of just having it right at the tip of your hands. In the binder, you're also going to want your script, your outline treatment. You're going to want your production calendar. So these are where you have your deadlines. And it's crucial to have deadlines because if you whim it, then you don't know how long a production is going to take. So you want to definitely narrow down, like episode 1, is it airing every 2 weeks? What days are you shooting? So you really kind of want to hone it down to break down and organize that scheduling. You're also going to have your budget breakdown. How much money are you spending? How much money do you have to spend? How much money are you spending per episode if you're working episodic? The more information you have in this binder, the better. You're also going to want your agreements. Now, agreements can be for music use. It could be for locations. It could be for equipment. And it's extremely important to keep this document for as long as you can, pretty much forever, until you sell it and it becomes someone else's problem or asset. Insurance, if you're working on locations. In the studio, it's a little bit different because we were insured. But if you're working out in the field, you're going to want to have insurance to protect you and your crew. Permits depends on what area you're working with. Different communities or different counties have different permits. They also have fees, things like that. So you want to definitely look into it. The producer would to figuring out what kind of permits you need. The person that is always great to get in contact with is the film commissioner of your county. I would also break it down even further per episode. And so either create a tab or a folder per episode. So again, you have your treatment outline or script for that episode in there. You have your shot list or storyboard. Again, you're working visual. So the more information you have and more note-taking in it, the binder, the more value it has. You're also going to want your model releases in there. Now, model releases are extremely important because, again, if you go to sell this project or move further than what was planned, you need to have those model releases signed ahead of time before you start filming because you don't want to hunt down anybody later. You want it all done because the worst thing to do is, say, 5 years later, you have to find that person. And what happens if they don't want to sign it? So before they step in front of the camera, get a model release. Again, you're going to want your crew calls per episode, so who worked on the crew, things like that. Photos are always fun to have, and they're a necessity, especially if you're going to have to go back and shoot anything. If you take photos and put them in your binder, you can have those references for any shots that you have to do in post-production. So say that you're filming and you need to you didn't get all the information you needed for that shoot, and you have to rebuild that set. You're going to need to know how your host was looking, how you had the light set up, how the table was placed, the props are set. So photos of your show is crucial in your binder because you can always recreate it later. This is also a safe spot to put notes. These notes can consist of just like ideas that you're getting and inspirations. It can also narrow down to how the production looked. And then it's just really quick references to be able to recreate if needed. So here are a couple samples of some of our agreements. So location shoot agreement is really important because say that you do find a set or a location and it's needed for your show or documentary or whatever production you're doing. And you are working with Grandma Withers and you go out into her property and you have the signed agreement and Grandma Withers goes on vacation. And her daughter comes and says, do you have permission to use my mom's land? If you say I do, and she says, where's your proof? This is your proof. This is also a contract that tells what days you will be on, what insurance, who's protected by what. So it also protects the location owners and also you as a filmmaker or a content creator. So this is crucial to have if you're shooting outside that is not on your own property. This is a sample of a talent release agreement. So a talent is an individual that you're filming in front of the camera or using for a podcast. And what this says is that you can use their likeness, their image, their voice, stills of them in this production. But you also want to be able to make sure that this contract says for promotion and for social media aspects, things like that. You don't want to lock yourself into just that date that they're filming. You want to make sure that you can use their images and what's created to promote. Again, this protects you because you don't want someone to come in and say, I didn't give you permission for this project or for this post or things like that. That you can always go back and say, yes, you did. And this is irreversible. So once you have this signed, they can't come back 5 years and go and say, take you back, Z's. You can't use what we filmed. You have it in writing in contract, so you're safe. The other contract you want to make sure you have is a minor talent release agreement from the parents, because you don't want to work with a child who is under 18 and then have the parents come back and say, I didn't give you an agreement. So same setup as a talent release. It's just making sure that you're protected to use their likeness, their voice, and anything else needed to promote your what you're shooting. A great resource to find some free templates is studiobinder.com. Now, they do a paid subscription, but you can definitely find the talent releases, the location agreements, and many other like the crew call, the shooting schedules, templates. And one thing I do like about them is they give it to you in a doc form, and you can go back and alter and make it suited for each production. And it looks more professional instead of writing it in. This has also been scanned over by a lawyer or someone who has information about about law and things like that. So the worst thing that you could do is write one up and not have all the right language in there and not be able to use your footage because of that. So you do want to make sure that your templates are actual contracts that you can use. So once you have your binder set and you are planned out and you have your crew set, you have your talents, you have your schedules, you then move into, the other one is, storyboarding in pre-production. And I wanted to make sure I touch base on this because we are storytellers and we work in a very visual format. Even with podcasting nowadays, we usually film them so we can put them up on YouTube and on our broadcast channel. So even in just audio format, we're still mapping out a visual setting, is we work with storyboards. Now, storyboards can be as in-depth as you want. So like say you're a very good artist and you want to draw them out shot by shot, you definitely can. There's jobs out there in film that are very lucrative for artists to go into. You can also do it as simple as just stick figures or just writing out. And what a storyboard does is you can break it down shot by shot. So you know, again, what kind of equipment you need, the set that you're building, the lighting you're going to need, so you can get in depth as you want. It could just be one page if you're working in studio. and just drawing up what the set looks like, what props you need, how you want to dress. It can be as elaborate or as simple as you want it to be. And it's also a great way to take whatever's in our heads, because as creators, we have a lot of ideas. And those ideas don't always come out correct when we verbalize them. So if we can show them, storyboards are a great way to be able to talk with like your director or your cinematographer about what you see in your head and have it on paper. So once you lock down all of these ideas and you have all of these productions in place and the scheduling and the contracts and all of that done, you are now ready for phase 2. Now, phase 2 is the production phase. So this is where the actual filming or recording takes place. So all of that organization, all of those nights of planning and walking through and seeing and budget counts and all of that lead up to production. So it's really where the magic happens. So this is where you get to set up your sound, your lights, your cameras. So remember we talked about those equipment lists with the pre-production. This is when you have all of those working. So if you're not doing pre-production correctly, and say you get to stage 2 and you have a 3-camera setup, but you didn't talk to the equipment renters if you don't have the equipment, and all of a sudden you only have 2 cameras because you didn't do that in pre-production and have it lined up, now you're scrambling to get it done. Pre-production makes this phase a lot smoother if done correctly. So you're setting up your sound, you're lighting your cameras. This is where you're recording your media, your interviews, your voiceovers, your B-roll. And B-roll is used as a secondary footage that is used in editing. The more B-roll you have, the better. So think of you're doing an interview and someone is talking about the forest, or they're talking about their grandparents. B-roll would be like pictures of the forest, or video of their location they're talking about, or video of their grandkids if they're talking about their grandkids. Music is another spot in production. So say you have someone that is coming in to record for your production, like a music or a music for your intro, or music for a scene that's done in production stages also. This is also where you get to work with the green screen. So again, if your pre-production is not thorough and you go to working with the green screen and you're hemming and hawing about what's in the background, how do you react to what's in the background if you can't see it? So those ideas and those thoughts have to be done in pre-production. And one of the most crucial spots of production, and this is also about that planning, is file labeling. Jeff had talked about having 2,800 files when Tom and Jeff did their production with the Night Foundry with 1.6 terabytes. You don't want to be going through 1.6 terabytes of footage without knowing what it's called, or knowing where, when it was filmed, or knowing what you filmed. And then when you get to editing, you can't rename those. Once you start that editing process, you're shooting yourself in the foot. So it all comes down to that organization bit. So file labeling in this step is very, very crucial. So now you're filmed, you're ready to roll. Now we're on to phase 3, and that is the post-production. Now again, the production bit's done, and that's why we're in post. So this is where that raw footage, now raw footage is raw. Like, you're gonna have to do some magic to make it look. And it's not edited together, or it's not placed together. So this is, you don't have the finished product. This is where it becomes that finished product. This is where that, let's say, it's magic, but it's a little bit more than magic. It's all of that planning, those storyboards, all of those come in place because you're putting it all together and seeing that as a final product. So this is where you're taking those organized footage. So very, very important. And then you're editing together. You're compiling them together and cutting them and getting rid of the excess information you don't need. This is where you're doing your sound design. This is where you're adding that music. This is the special effects, graphic cards, or graphic titles, color correction. You're making it look good. This is also where you start really heavy in the marketing materials. Now, we did in pre-production, you have all those schedules and all those deadlines written out. But now, since you have everything filmed and you're editing, you definitely know you're going to reach those deadlines. So you can go from soft marketing to heavy marketing at this point, creating those posters, doing more social media aspects because you know you're going to reach those end. This is also where you want your credit. So who worked on the project? And again, that production binder will tell you all that information and you don't have to hunt it down. So it's edit, edit, edit. Some of the programs that you can use in this step is DaVinci Resolve, which is really good with color correction, Final Cut Pro, and then you also have the Adobe Premiere series. There's also some more free resources like Power Director and some other ones. As an editor, they'll choose what format they're mostly comfortable with. And if you're the editor, then YouTube is a great resource to kind of hone in on some more of these techniques and skills if needed. And yeah, figure it out. So those are the 3 Ps. So some really good resources for post is Storyblocks. Storyblocks is a great spot to find stock footage, stock video, some sound bites or some audio recordings, music. Canva is a great spot and it's free if you want to use a little bit more. It's free they don't have as many options if you paid for it, but you can definitely use the free software on that one, and it's downloadable. And that is really good for like creating graphics and posters and things like that. Motion Array can help you with titles. They also, again, have some stock photos and stock audio tracks that you can get. Soundstripe is really good for audio. Now, when you do anything with Storyblocks or Motion Array or Soundstripe, you want to get those uses agreements. So we talked about when you get to the point of distribution, so you're uploading onto YouTube or you're selling, you're going to want to save your agreements or the code that they give you, because at some point, especially with audio, YouTube is notorious of being like, hey, you don't own the rights over these, or we need to know that you own the rights. You have to prove it. So if you get in a habit of just automatically getting that information and storing it either as a digital file or into your production binder and having easy access to it, again, it speeds up that production. And that, my friends, is the 3 Ps. One of the questions that popped up is, who needs a binder? Really, it's any producer that is creating a show or a documentary or even working with social media. And if you're here today or you're watching this video, I imagine it's you, because you have an idea that you want to see in film. So I'm assuming that you need to start your production binder, and this is the beginning steps of it.